October 28th, 1940. Italian soldiers cross from Albania into Greece, confident they'll be in Athens within 2 weeks. Benito Mussolini has promised Hitler a quick victory, a parallel triumph to Germany's conquests in Poland and France. The Duce wants to prove Italy can win its own wars, that the Rome-Berlin axis is a partnership between equals, not a relationship between master and servant. Within 3 weeks, the Italian army is in full retreat. Greek forces, outnumbered and outgunned on paper, use the mountainous terrain to devastating effect. They push the Italians back across the border, then keep pushing into Albania itself. By mid-November, Italy has lost a quarter of Albania, the colony it had held since 1939. Italian soldiers, many wearing summer uniforms in the freezing mountain passes, surrender in groups of hundreds. The Greeks capture entire battalions. Mussolini watches his grand gesture of Italian power collapse into humiliation. He had launched the invasion partly to show Hitler that Italy didn't need German permission for everything, that the junior partner could act independently. Now that independence is costing him everything he'd hoped to prove. The numbers tell the story he doesn't want to hear. By December, Italy has suffered over 13,000 dead, more than 50,000 wounded, and 25,000 missing or captured. The invasion force of nearly 150,000 men is being mauled by a Greek army that had seemed, on paper, hopelessly outmatched. Italian generals blame each other. Mussolini fires General Visconti Prasca, who had commanded the invasion. He fires Marshal Badoglio, his chief of general staff. He takes personal command of the Albanian front himself. Nothing helps. The Greeks keep advancing. In Rome, Count Galeazzo Ciano, Mussolini's son-in-law and foreign minister, writes in his diary with barely concealed despair. The 37-year-old had been one of the architects of the Greek invasion, convinced it would be easy. Now he watches his father-in-law grow increasingly frantic, increasingly aware that the entire fascist project's credibility is crumbling in the Albanian mountains. And then comes the meeting Mussolini has been dreading. January 19th, 1941. Hitler's train arrives at the Berghof. The Führer has summoned Mussolini to discuss the situation in the Mediterranean. The language is diplomatic. The reality is an interrogation. Hitler wants to know how Italy, with its supposed military might, with its claims of recreating the Roman Empire, has been beaten by Greece. Mussolini sits across from Hitler and tries to explain. The weather was bad. The terrain was impossible. The Greeks fought with unexpected ferocity. The Italian equipment was inadequate. The generals were incompetent. Every excuse sounds weaker than the last, and both men know it. Hitler listens with cold patience. He's already made his decision. Germany will invade Greece itself, will clean up the mess Italy has created. But there's a price. Italy will accept German operational control. Italy will send divisions wherever Germany requires. Italy will acknowledge, in practice if not in name, that it is no longer an equal partner in the Axis, but a subordinate power. Mussolini agrees to everything. What choice does he have? His army is still being pushed back in Albania. His people are losing faith. His regime's entire propaganda structure, built on the myth of Italian martial prowess, is collapsing. He needs German help, and Hitler knows it. Ciano records Mussolini's mood after the meeting. The Duce is humiliated and furious. He complains that Hitler always presents him with fait accompli, with decisions already made that Italy must simply accept. But Mussolini's anger is impotent. He has created this situation himself, and now he must live with the consequences. April 6th, 1941. German forces invade Yugoslavia and Greece simultaneously. Operation Marita begins with the precision and overwhelming force that has characterized every German military operation since Poland. Stukas scream over Greek positions. Panzer divisions roll through Yugoslav defenses. The Wehrmacht moves with a speed and coordination that makes the Italian invasion look like a comic opera. Greek forces that had held the Italians at bay for 5 months crumble under the German assault in 3 weeks. Athens falls on April 27th. The swastika flies over the Acropolis. The campaign that was supposed to demonstrate Italian power has become a showcase for German superiority, and Mussolini must watch as his army becomes an afterthought in its own theater. The occupation zones are divided. Germany takes the strategically crucial areas: Athens, Thessaloniki, the islands commanding the Aegean, the border regions with Turkey. Italy receives secondary zones, areas of less importance, territories that matter more for prestige than for strategic value. The message is clear. Germany won this war. Italy merely participated. But the real humiliation is still coming. Hitler's headquarters issues new deployment orders for Italian forces. 8 divisions are to be prepared for service on the Eastern Front. Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union, is being prepared for June. Germany wants Italian troops to participate, but not as partners in planning or execution. Italian divisions will serve under German operational command, filling gaps in the line, taking orders from Wehrmacht generals, functioning as auxiliaries to the main German effort. Mussolini receives these orders and realizes what has happened. His army is being split apart. Some divisions will remain in the Balkans under German supervision. Others will go to Russia under German command. His North African forces already operate in coordination with Rommel, who answers to Berlin, not Rome. The Italian military, which Mussolini had imagined as the sword of a new Roman Empire, has become a collection of support units for Germany's wars. In his office in Rome, Mussolini says to Ciano what he cannot say in public: the Germans have taken everything. It's not just territory, it's not just operational control, it's the entire pretense of equality. The Rome-Berlin axis, which Mussolini had proclaimed as a partnership between 2 great powers, has revealed itself as a relationship between master and client. Italy is no longer fighting its own war. It's fighting Germany's war, wherever and however Germany dictates. Ciano records his father-in-law's resentment, the way Mussolini complains in private about German arrogance while remaining obsequious in Hitler's presence. The Duke, who had postured as the founder of fascism, the man who had inspired Hitler's own rise, now finds himself treated as a subordinate. Hitler makes decisions. Mussolini receives orders. The split of the Italian army is not a single dramatic moment, but a progressive dismemberment. Through the spring and summer of 1941, Italian divisions are parceled out to different theaters, all under German control. The 8th Army, eventually renamed Armia, the Italian army in Russia, prepares for deployment to the Eastern Front. Over 200,000 Italian soldiers will eventually serve there, fighting battles they barely understand in a war that has nothing to do with Italian interests. In the Balkans, Italian occupation forces find themselves subordinate to German military governors. In North Africa, Italian divisions take orders from Rommel's Africa Corps headquarters. The Italian Navy coordinates its operations with German requirements. The Italian Air Force flies missions approved by the Luftwaffe. Mussolini's response is to double down on propaganda. If Italy cannot be Germany's equal, in fact, it will proclaim equality even more loudly in rhetoric. Fascist newspapers celebrate Italian-German brotherhood. Mussolini gives speeches about the inevitable Axis victory. He visits troops and tells them they're fighting for Italian glory. But in private, the humiliation festers. Ciano's diary becomes a record of Mussolini's impotent rage. The Duce complains that Italian soldiers are being used as cannon fodder for German objectives. He resents that Hitler never consults him on major decisions, only informs him after the fact. He bristles at the way German officers treat Italian commanders with barely concealed contempt. Yet Mussolini can do nothing. He has tied Italy's fate to Germany's, and the Greek disaster has exposed the true balance of power. Italy needs German support to avoid complete collapse. Germany provides that support, but at the price of Italian autonomy. The Greek campaign's failure has revealed what both Mussolini and Hitler had known, but never openly acknowledged. Italy is not Germany's equal. Its military is not as well trained, not as well equipped, not as well led. Its industrial base cannot support a modern war. Its people are not as committed to the fascist cause as German people are to Nazism. The entire Italian war effort is built on a foundation of propaganda and pretense, and Greece has exposed that foundation as hollow. When the Italian divisions deploy to Russia in the summer of 1941, they march east, knowing they're not fighting Italy's war. They're fighting because Germany has ordered it, because Mussolini has no choice but to comply, because the Greek disaster has stripped away any pretense of Italian independence. The soldiers joke bitterly about their situation. They call themselves Germany's Italians, a play on the phrase Italy's Germans that had been used for South Tyrolans. The joke captures the reality. They belong to Germany now, not in law but in fact. Their commanders take orders from Wehrmacht headquarters. Their objectives are set in Berlin, not Rome. They fight and die for German strategic goals. Mussolini tries to visit these troops to maintain the fiction that they're serving Italian interests. He flies to the Eastern Front in August 1941, tours the Italian positions, gives speeches about duty and honor and the Axis cause. The soldiers cheer dutifully. But everyone knows the truth. These men are here because Italy failed in Greece, because that failure forced Mussolini to accept German terms, because those terms included providing Italian bodies for German battles. Back in Rome, Mussolini meets with his generals and tries to maintain some semblance of control over Italian military policy. But every discussion ends the same way. What does Germany want? What has Hitler decided? The Italian military apparatus has become a mechanism for implementing German decisions, not for making Italian ones. Ciano watches his father-in-law struggle with this reality. The 38-year-old foreign minister, once so confident in fascist Italy's destiny, now sees the regime's hollowness. He writes in his diary that Mussolini is a prisoner of his own propaganda, unable to admit the truth about Italy's weakness, because doing so would undermine everything fascism claims to represent. The split of the Italian army is really the split of Mussolini's vision. He had imagined Italy as a great power, a new Rome that would dominate the Mediterranean and North Africa, that would stand as Germany's equal in reshaping Europe. The Greek disaster has shattered that vision. Italy is not a great power. It's a second-rate military with delusions of grandeur, and those delusions have cost it its independence. By the end of 1941, Italian forces are scattered across 3 continents, all serving under German operational control. In Russia, Italian divisions hold sections of the front line, taking orders from Wehrmacht commanders. In North Africa, Italian troops support Rommel's operations, their movements dictated by German strategic requirements. In the Balkans, Italian occupation forces answer to German military governors. Even in Italy itself, German liaison officers are embedded in Italian commands, ostensibly to coordinate operations, but really to ensure Italian compliance with German directives. Mussolini's public statements remain defiant. He proclaims Italian-German unity, celebrates Axis victories, promises ultimate triumph. But the words ring hollow now. Everyone knows Italy is not Germany's partner, but its dependent, not its ally, but its auxiliary. In his private moments, Mussolini rages against the situation. He complains to Ciano that Hitler treats him like a subordinate, that Germany makes all the important decisions while Italy is left to provide bodies and resources. He resents the way German officers dismiss Italian military capabilities, the way they assume command of any joint operation, the way they take credit for victories while blaming Italians for defeats. But Mussolini's resentment changes nothing. He made the choice to invade Greece without German support, to prove Italian independence. That choice led to disaster. The disaster forced him to accept German help. The help came with strings attached. Those strings have become chains. What Mussolini said when Germany split his army after he failed in Greece was, ultimately, nothing that mattered. He complained in private, raged to Ciano, expressed humiliation and resentment. But in public, to Hitler, to the German High Command, he said yes. Yes to German operational control. Yes to splitting Italian forces across multiple theaters. Yes to subordinating Italian military decisions to German strategic requirements. Yes to the end of any pretense that Italy was Germany's equal. The Greek campaign had promised to demonstrate Italian power. Instead, it demonstrated Italian weakness. And that weakness gave Germany the leverage to take control of the Italian military, to split it apart and deploy it wherever German interests required, to reduce Italy from partner to puppet. Mussolini had wanted to avoid becoming Hitler's junior partner. The Greek disaster made him exactly that. And when Germany split his army, sending Italian divisions to fight German wars in theaters Italy had never chosen, Mussolini could only watch and accept. His words of protest were private and impotent. His public words were compliance and submission. The Duce, who had proclaimed himself the founder of fascism, who had inspired Hitler's own rise to power, who had imagined himself as the architect of a new Roman Empire, had been reduced to a subordinate by his own miscalculation. Greece had exposed the truth about Italian military power. Germany had exploited that truth to take control, and Mussolini, for all his bluster and rage, could do nothing but accept the new reality. By 1942, the split of the Italian army is complete. Italian forces serve in Russia, in North Africa, in the Balkans, in the Mediterranean, all under German operational control or coordination. The Italian military has become an auxiliary to the German war machine. And Mussolini, who had dreamed of standing as Hitler's equal, has become what he always feared, a client dictator, dependent on German power, implementing German decisions, sending Italian soldiers to die in German wars. What he said doesn't matter as much as what he did, and what he did was surrender Italian military independence, piece by piece, division by division, until nothing remained of the vision he had proclaimed. The Greek disaster had started the process. Germany's exploitation of that disaster completed it, and Mussolini, trapped by his own propaganda and his regime's weakness, could only watch as his army was split apart and scattered across Hitler's empire.